as King Charles is in Ottawa making that speech. How are you doing out there? All jacked up?
As you can imagine, I'm just overjoyed that His Majesty has blessed our air, that he breathes the same air as I do, at least for a short period.
I even got all dressed up for him there. I didn't put on the tie, though.
I'm just watching him now. He's in downtown Ottawa, right next to the Parliament building, and he's shaking all the hands. I don't understand why people point phones at like anybody even slightly famous, but like the king, to point a phone at him and try and shake his hand at the same time. It's just so crass. Do these people just not have any sort of sense of decorum whatsoever, or even humanity? It's just so repulsive. But I also found it interesting that somebody was waving a German flag. I think that was a bit amusing. I wonder what he thought of that. Though those are his ancestors, after all.
We do have a clip here from King Charles in Parliament here. We're going to play this clip.
Faces unprecedented challenges, generating uncertainties across the continent, while the world faces unprecedented challenges, generating uncertainties across the continents with regards to peace and stability, economics and climate change. Your communities have the skills and determination to bring a wealth of solutions.
So, listen to the swagger of how he speaks there, the swagger of his cadence. I mean, that was, he said a lot of platitudes, a lot of like, I love Canada stuff. And also the true North is indeed strong and free, he said, which got people very excited and made them applaud. But I mean, other than that, it was a classic King speech, really. It was just a regurgitation of the campaign points of the party that he was reading it on behalf of. But he did do a land acknowledgement at the beginning, which I thought was very, very curious from my perspective. Having grown up with the monarch all these years, to hear that kind of jarring, out of context, statement, because there's nothing like that. And people in England have absolutely no idea that such things occur, land acknowledgements. But that was greeted with passionate joy from the CBC presenters, which is why I was watching it. They were absolutely delighted that there was a land acknowledgement. So good news for them, I guess.
You were right about all the medals, though. Like you said, he was going to wear a few medals. That was from when he was at where did he earn all those medals? Do we know?
Just general bravery, and he's very good at polo. Actually, I believe. Anyway, I've heard that he's quite good at polo, or was. Don't think he plays anymore. I mean, in that sense, he doesn't look very healthy. He's been limping a lot, and just in general, I kind of felt a bit sorry for him. Really, he looked like he was struggling under the Ottawa sunshine. So he's clearly unwell. I mean, he still has some kind of cancer, which has never been revealed, never been actually explained what it is, but he's still quite ill.
Well, that he did open the 45th Parliament, and like I think you said yesterday, the last time that the monarch opened Parliament was in 1977 under Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
And Pierre Elliott Trudeau's son was there to watch this one. And he did mention his mother, Charles. He was saying, my wonderful departed mother, and reference that, and how Canada's changed so much over the years since Elizabeth was last on the scene. But there was actually one tiny bit of news in it. The rest of it was just, it might as well have just been some sort of mediocre liberal official might as well have read it out, because it was just like a summarized version of the Liberal platform. But there was one bit that was news, which was that Canada's going to join the ReArm plan, which is the European, supposed to be like €500 billion worth of contracts available for military contracts for Europe to try and rearm and meet the challenge from Russia and all that. So that is news, and that's quite interesting, and that will inevitably cause discomfort in Washington, D.C.
One of the things, though, maybe for when they make speeches like that, maybe Canada should invest in a teleprompter instead of looking down reading from a piece of paper.
Well, I'm in a way, I'm glad that he does do that, because there's something very sort of vulgar and cheap about the teleprompter thing, I think. And whereas Charlie Boy there, he just sat there with his piece of paper. It's like he's at school or something.
That's what it reminded me of.
I'm just not a fan of those. I'm not a fan of the teleprompters, and I'm not a fan of the sort of really fake way that modern speakers conduct themselves nowadays. I think it's just like, you might as well get an Optimus robot to do it. It's just pointless. It's pointless having a human being do it in a lot of cases. Whereas Charlie is, whatever you might say about him, he is a human being, and he has his own weird quirks and whatnot. So I'm kind of glad he didn't use a teleprompter.
Put me down for the teleprompter and the Optimus. There you go. See, we don't always agree. And
King Optimus.
And the Canadians, kind of look indifferent about the King's visit to Canada. I think there was a lot more love and attachment to the Queen than there is to the King, because like during while the Queen was still alive, Prince Charles didn't have like a great relationship with the media and with Canadians, I don't think.
Well, he's
especially
always
with
had
the Princess Diana stuff, right? All that stuff with Princess Diana, I think he was seen more as the villain by many, many people.
Yeah, I think maybe that's from the Canadian end, but he's always been very keen on Canada and Canadians for his part. He's spent a lot of time in Canada, and he has a kind of special affection for Canada. And that's also true of his mother. So I guess maybe he got that from his mother. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I said this yesterday, that Angus Reid is perfectly timed here, just come and confirmed what I said yesterday, which is that most Canadians don't care. And that can be confirmed if you just ask people. If you just ask random people that you encounter in the day, like, what do you think of this, the King coming? And like, people don't care. It's not even... And it's complete indifference. And even the CBC, which is so excited, the whole press call, if you want to call it that, the mediocre sycophants in the Canadian media that cover this kind of thing, they're going on and on and on about it as if it's like the biggest deal. But even they don't care, because all they ever talk about is Donald Trump. Like, this isn't about King Charles as far as they're concerned. And I don't think it's even about Charles as far as the ministers and the MPs are concerned and the political class. This is about Donald Trump. And it's like, so I've been watching the CBC one, but I've watched other sort of channels that are covering it, and it's just all about Donald Trump. And Canadian press, all the rest of it, it's like, oh, maybe Trump will watch this, maybe Trump will react. It's just that's just a sign that they don't care. They don't understand what this is, and they don't care either. This is just another stupid episode in the Trump affair, isn't it? Really, it's just more unimaginative, boring guff from Canada's elite. But it is important, though. Even though Canadians don't care, as like 90% in some provinces, I think that was Quebec, just don't care at all, completely indifferent. But it is very important, and it is kind of, as I said yesterday, if you study, even you spend like 5 minutes studying Canadian history, you see how central the monarchy is. It's absolutely fundamental to what this country is, and the idea that it could be a republic, I think that's delusional thinking, actually, that Canada could be a republic, because it wouldn't be Canada anymore. It would be something else, and probably it would be more than one country then as well.
Yeah, Canada faces massive challenge, though, to hit NATO spending, as the target now is moving up, right? So, and Canada is such an outlier with its paltry defense budget. It will face massive challenge to catch up with NATO partners. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's not exactly news, is it, that Canada's like an outlier and whatnot? But I think it's emphasized how much of an outlier Canada is now that NATO's, because Trump's been talking about this 5% thing for a little while now, but now NATO is apparently going to back that, the 5% target. I mean, that is just so far out of Canada's league. That's like 5 times what Canada spends now on the military. It's just not going to happen.
And
There's no chance Canada's going to spend 5%. It's probably not even going to spend 2%. So, but Carney has committed to 2% by 2030. Whether that happens is another story, isn't it? He's probably not going to be prime minister in 2030. So,
and we don't have the recruitment. We don't have the recruitment numbers. I think our military is just around 55,000. Well, full complement would be about 76,000, which is still very, very low. And we just can't recruit. The pay is low, the treatment not so great, and the equipment that we have not that great as well. So very, very hard to recruit people. The Liberals even tried to recruit immigrants and they spent a couple of years and a bunch of money trying to get, and got almost nothing out of that as well.
Yeah, even they didn't want to join. That's the thing. It's like, it's a cultural thing as well. It's been done down for so long, hasn't it? The military as a profession. It's like, it doesn't have the same prestige attached to it. So people in Canada with let's say a little bit of ambition, they would probably rather go and work in the federal government in like the Department of Women or some random invented, pointless department. They would probably derive more of a sense of like status. They'd certainly get more money.
Yeah, triple
from
the
doing
pay,
that, which is a completely useless job. It's a completely pointless job that shouldn't even exist in the first place. It's basically just welfare for the middle class. Whereas the military is all important, and yet there's no culture that sort of pushes people into that. There's no prestige, there's no cachet, and certainly there's no money, and the conditions are terrible as well. So, I mean, I think that's almost of as much of a priority as anything, is to try and like rehabilitate the military as a career choice, give it the prestige that it deserves, rather than these, time wasting email jobs in the federal government that nobody needs.
Yeah, triple the pay almost, and you don't even have to come into work. Like, I think you have to work 3 days of the week, and then they don't even show up for those 3 days of the week. Or you can go and get paid a lot less, and then sleep in sleeping bags that aren't even suited for the cold, and work with equipment that's 40 plus years old. There you go, like, tough choice, right?
And at any moment, you might be sent somewhere like Afghanistan to go and die for nothing, for pointless, stupid wars that the Americans decide that they want to fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and the American military, we talked about it yesterday, definitely seeing a resurgence in recruitment, and maybe Canada should take a look at some of the stuff that's happening down there. Carney
they pay a lot more money there, don't they? And the benefits are a lot more enticing there, and also the prestige. It matters in America. It's still quite a prestigious thing to do in America, and people will go out of their way to pay their sort of respects to you and all the rest of it.
It's
not like that in Canada, is it? It's been completely jettisoned, hasn't it, in Canada?
Lots of respect for the military in general, because they are the world's #1 military machine. So obviously with that comes a lot of things. I have a couple of friends that were in the military, and they say they showed up at a peacekeeping thing once, and as they're getting off the plane, the Americans were already there, and they said, "Oh, good, the cooks are here." So it's been a long time that Canada has neglected its military.
Which is a shame, because in actual wars that matter, not these stupid imperialistic ventures that the Americans have wasted so many lives on, like Vietnam and all the rest of it. But in the real wars, like the First World War and the Second World War, the Canadians were, sort of man to man, were vastly superior to the Americans. Way better, much higher reputation. They had basically the best reputation in the whole Allied forces, the Canadian, particularly infantry. So it's a shame, isn't it? I mean, that's like one of the sort of Canadian inheritances. That's like one of the crown jewels of Canada, and it's just been like flushed down the toilet over the last sort of 80 years or so.
Mark Carney will not take up Trudeau's question period tradition. We know that he doesn't like to take questions, so that's no surprise.
Well, he's still going to take questions from
the
leaders, the party leaders. But he's not going to waste his time with the peasants who are in the stalls, who haven't even got a first-class ticket to Parliament. He's not going to waste his time on those people.
He did that thing with even Jolie yesterday, where he just waved her off. That's getting a lot of attention on the internet, when she tried to sidle up there and ask a question. He's just like, off with you.
I think that's going to be his undoing. I think once the novelty wears off, his superciliousness is what is going to run him down and run his reputation down, because he is very dismissive of people who are either equal or beneath him. Not that he really recognizes anybody as his equal, but he's very dismissive and he's very arrogant and haughty. And I think he tries to talk about his humility and what a humble guy he is and all the rest of it. But I think that's what, like, his fatal weakness. The way that, like, Justin Trudeau's ridiculousness was his fatal weakness. I think Carney's is that he is just self-obsessed, isn't he? And he's a very arrogant chap.
Yeah, and then imagine this study comes out that says allowing all these foreign students and cost Canadians jobs and wages, and that's what the Bank of Canada research shows. There you go. The latest study confirmed in 2022. You didn't need a study for this, right?
That can't be true. Surely not.
That the foreign labor had a significant impact on some sectors, and that accounted for a larger share of workers in low-skilled occupations, replacing Canadian-born workers who moved out of these jobs, right? So, so the Department of Immigration counted 2.3 million foreign workers in 2023. That included over 1 million foreign students, 766,000 migrant workers, and 471,000 landed immigrants. Between 2015 and 2024, temporary foreign workers have become younger, less experienced, and more likely to migrate from lower income countries. There you go.
Lower income countries like the UK, where I came from.
Yeah, we got something about the UK later on here. And the wages were typically 22% lower than Canadian-born workers, right? So research suggested foreign labor cost Canadian jobs and wages in sectors like construction, trucking, beauty salons, restaurants, and fish processing, where foreign workers were willing to work for lower wages than what a Canadian resident would consider acceptable. This points to some risk of job displacement or wage suppression in specific sectors and occupations. I mean, that has been the complaint. And even some of the bigger unions here in British Columbia have complained about that this high immigration has led to suppression of wages in the construction industry.
They've done it in a very spineless way, because they need to appease the old ideology of the left, which is that basically unlimited immigration is perfect and great, let's do it kind of thing. So the way that they tend to criticize is kind of the immigrants they're not being treated right. Okay, that's not really what they mean, though. They mean I don't have as much bargaining power anymore, and nor do my members, and our wages aren't as high as they should be. But it's kind of, this is a sort of international phenomenon. This is occurring in Europe and all over the place. And I mean, it's funny, you wrote that little essay yesterday, didn't you, about saying that Canada should be like Qatar. It's interesting that you say that, because Qatar is a country where they have a tiny population of citizens, and then they have a massive, they have like professionals from the US and Canada and places like that. They make good money. And then they just have a massive people from like Pakistan and India and Bangladesh who come and just, they basically work like indentured servants for really quite low salaries and in pretty bad conditions. And it's a little bit ironic, isn't it? Because Canada's almost tried to get in on that, but while also being holier than thou, and while also doling out ultimately citizenship, like permanent resident status, and then citizenship and everything that entails, and trying to create a multicultural society that absorbs all these people. But it doesn't work. There's a reason Qatar can do that. It's because Qatar is like an absolute monarchy with a very different culture. It's not a Western country at all. It's living in a different world. You can't really do that in Canada. And it feels like that's what this is, really. It's an attempt to kind of do a bit like what they've done in places like Qatar and elsewhere, UAE and other sort of wealthy, oil-rich countries in the Middle East. But, I mean, even Justin Trudeau said this has been a failure, lest we forget. And he said that about 2 years ago now. So it's been a long time coming, I think, recognition of this.
Yeah. And then CBC did a story. They're investigating Albertan culture as they interviewed trans resident Fort Mac. I mean, they're going to probably do anything they can to kind of like suppress the separatist movement in Alberta. That's an interesting angle they took there.
It was. I mean, it's a CBC. I mean, I love nothing more than having a giggle at the CBC and their just fundamental ridiculousness. But this is funny because, like, first of all, the premise of the story is there actually a unique culture in Alberta? I mean, I don't think that's even a question. Obviously, it's true. But, you know, to hash this out and to figure it all out, they interview a series of people, including like an Alberta separatist. And then they take that and then they interview a transgender resident. And I only mention that. That's the under. They talk about and LGBTQ and all family values and things like that. That's what's under discussion. And wokeness. Apparently, this person that the interview says the war against wokeness, which I suppose is what Danielle Smith is accused of waging, that actually leaves a lot of Canadians out, and that makes a lot of Canadians feel excluded from. A lot of Albertans feel excluded from Alberta because of that. But I mean, it's just classic CBC, and it just gave me a chuckle. It does.
Fourth speaker in 6 years. So they elected a different speaker, and that's Francis. I'm going to get his name. Scarpeglia. I have no idea.
Scarpeglia.
Yeah, there you go. He's an 8-term Liberal MP, and he says we're all equal here. And he was elected by secret preferential ballot over 5 other candidates. All of them were Liberal MPs. 2 Conservative nominees withdrew from balloting. And the one that obviously Greg Fergus, not happy with that because he did put his name in as well, right? But, you know, he admitted some errors when he ran. There was some, you know, like he did get some attention for some of the things that they said was very partisan. Which is not supposed to.
Well, he turfed Polyev, didn't he?
Yeah.
That was the peak of his controversy, I think, when he kicked out Pierre Polyev. And you know, there were a few other things. He also made a speech, didn't he, which was deemed to be partisan, because I think he made a reference to something like our party or something like that. Whereas they're supposed to be apolitical as soon as they become speaker. But it is a bit of a shame because he was like a cool customer. He had like a very good. Talk about decorum. He certainly had that in spades. I thought he was such a smooth, like, cool guy, and exactly the sort of preened individual that you want as speaker. But alas, it wasn't meant to be, Greggy.
A lot different than the dry, you know, like the typical dry person as Speaker of the House. But even the Bloc called him into questions, and their own dissenting opinions agreed Fergus could not continue as Speaker. Just like a referee, the Speaker must embody impartiality, fairness, and judgment, and those qualities are essential. He lost the confidence of a large part of the House, made up of 149 members of the Bloc and the Conservative Party. There you go.
Understandable, but still a little bit disappointing because, like I said, he was a bit of a bean.
And here's the big chance. Alberta, as Danielle Smith calls, 3 by-elections where the NDP leader, Naheed Nishi, is going to run in Edmonton, Strathcona, which is, I think, a very strong NDP riding. We'll see what happens with the NDP because, you know, the NDP federally has fallen apart. And then here's, you know, and they were related to the, just like the BC NDP, to the federal party as well.
Well, they've rushed to separate themselves, haven't they, the Alberta NDP? You wouldn't want to be associated with that hot mess right now. But so, it is an interesting question. I mean, because they only won last time, didn't they? Because the right was split, if I'm not wrong. I'm not going to present myself as an expert on Alberta politics, but there was a split. So that's kind of what they need again, isn't it? And I guess maybe they're getting a little bit excited about the prospect of a split on the right between separatists and, you know, nationalists or whatever you would call them.
Sovereignist, like, so I think somebody said sovereignist.
Pro-Canada team.
Yeah, and that is a fairly safe riding. And if you look at the map of Alberta, when you look at the election map, It's typically very, very blue with like a little orange there in the Edmonton area, all the ridings in Edmonton. That's the NDP kind of stronghold. And they've won that seat 11 times over the past 12 elections. And that was a former seat of leader Rachel Notley as well, right? So
turkeys that don't want to vote for Christmas. That's
yeah,
what they
and
are
then,
in Edmonton, aren't they?
There's also in one of the ridings, the Alberta Republican leader Cam Davies is also running in the old Didsbury Three Hills area. I actually lived in Three Hills as a youngster. I lived on a cattle ranch in Three Hills. And he's a longtime conservative activist and organizer, and he's become the key figure in Alberta's renewed separatist movement following last month's federal election. And he said on Monday that going into that by-election with a sense of momentum, Alberta's ready for change. And he said even if he loses, any result will be a sign of growth of the movement. So there you go.
It's an interesting name for the party, that, isn't it? Republican Party.
It is a very interesting name for sure. There you go. And then Nishi was the mayor of Calgary. That was his kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and he was kind of parachuted in, wasn't he, to take over because he wasn't an MLA.
Rachel Notley, Nonsensely.
That's a desperate pun.
There you go. Did I say that? Was that my outside voice? There you go. Don't dismiss the NDP, says Davis. He's like the new Democratic leader says they deserve consideration as the party with a balance of power. Keep trying to get that Trump card, in the minority parliament. And Carney not really giving them much credibility right now. He hasn't even spoken to him yet. But he says we're a national party, even though they lost national party status. They had 1.2 million Canadians vote for them, and it's important that we have the tools we need to function and discharge that responsibility. So they didn't get the money. They didn't get a whole bunch of other things that come with being a official party. So there you go.
So they can't ask questions of Carney because Carney's not going to be there when they have the opportunity, because it'll just be the Conservatives and the Bloc that will have like a guaranteed question or a couple of questions, and that's pretty important actually, because that's where Jagmeet Singh made a lot of his statements, and that he got a lot of attention doing that when he would attack Justin Trudeau, like particularly when they were in that kind of coalition, which you might as well call it. He would often take that opportunity to like attack the Liberals, and that's when I think that was the peak of his career when he stood up once and said, "Has the Prime Minister ever even been in a grocery store?" But he just said it in such a hilarious way. I think that was probably his finest moment. But that like got a lot of airtime. But now they're not going to have the ability to do that anymore. So they're going to have to try and, because a lot of politics is just getting people to pay attention to you. And often they have to stage these events to try and just get the cameras on them. So it's going to be very difficult for the NDP. They're going to have to be imaginative, I think, to try and get that attention now.
Jagmeet Singh, I wonder what he's thinking right now as he basically led his party into irrelevance. And that's going to be the footnote beside what he did. Hopefully it was worth it for him.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's doing all right, isn't he? He and his family are doing okay. And I'm sure he'll have some sort of very, very nice sinecure job lined up that he'll do for a lot of money. And it'll just be joyous. It'll be great for Singh, but not so much for his party, no.
We haven't heard from him really. Like he hasn't had any podium time to spew some more nonsense.
He hasn't even posted a selfie in Canadian Tire like Justin did. Although Justin was there today.
Justin was there sitting next to Stephen Harper, wasn't he? There you go.
Yeah. And Kim Campbell, I think, was next to Harper.
Kim Campbell, this summer Prime Minister. She had the job for the whole summer. You mentioned earlier that I did post an opinion piece. I wrote that Canada should be the Qatar of the West, but we're pricing ourselves out of prosperity. My point was more on the GDP thing, not on the way the government is run. But Canada is not poor in energy. If you go read the piece, It's poor in policy, and I think I've made that point over and over again. Like we are one of the richest resource nations in the world, and that has been suppressed for a long, long time. So, go ahead and read that and then comment. I did post that on the link on LinkedIn as well, and it's also on Kelowna Now. You can go ahead and read that. And just more on the ongoing saga with the Online News Act. Still continues. We're just going to keep mentioning it. The Online News Act still cripples local independent media. And I think all the evidence is in. Like, how much more evidence do we need? Like failures after failure after failure. And it still goes on. We've had even our local MP, Stephen Fuhr, and the Liberal MP say that it needs to be repealed. The Conservatives say it needs to be repealed. Bell Media laid off 4,800 employees, citing Bill C-18. Most media outlets suffering all across Canada. Canadians getting half the news that they typically get because that's on all outlets. And yet it still continues. What more evidence do the Liberals need to repeal this bill?
It makes you wonder what their actual motivations are, doesn't it?
What's the logic?
One might say.
How does the logic continue? Like, how did they say that it needs to continue? Like, what is the logic? Canadians are Canada's the only G7 nation in Canada, in the G7 to not allow news onto meta platforms, and the Liberals have now spent, including Mark Carney's campaign, well north of $7 million on Meta.
The thing is, I think you're looking at it wrong. They don't need to have a logic. They don't need to have a justification for it because nobody ever asks them about it. Because everybody that might ask them about it has skin in the game.
Yeah.
They're on side to an extent, and they're not interested. They just don't care. Like those newsrooms aren't collapsing and about to die because they're being subsidized by taxpayers. So they don't want to say to the Liberals, why are you subsidizing my wages, sir? Why are you doing that? Obviously, they don't want to do that because they want that to continue. They want taxpayers to continue to pay for their salaries. And as a consequence, it's just not even on the agenda. But if they were removed, let's say some of the sort of bigger media outlets, if they were inexplicably denied the subsidies or something like that, then we would hear lots about it. And then they would have to come up with an excuse.
But the model has failed, though, because they're barely surviving. Most of them are failing anyway. They're just hanging on. They continue to lay people off. I mean, you look at the stock charts. Go pull up Chorus's stock chart, which is global news. Pull it up. Have a look. And just look how well they're doing. Pull up any of them. Pull up Glacier Media. Pull it up and just have a quick look at what's going on. And then go look at the financials even for the Winnipeg Free Press. Just go have a look. The only people that are doing extremely well in this is CBC. And the executives proved that when they got their increase in budget. And the first thing they did was give themselves a raise. Well-deserved, I guess.
But in a sense as well, a lot of the other brands, the usual suspects in the Canadian media, they do benefit in a sense because, in effect, any sort of challenger, any sort of rival is just excluded from the beginning. So they can continue being mediocre, often ideologues, very boring. They don't have to improve. They don't have to do the hard work of actually trying to improve to attract an audience, because they almost have one by default because there's no one else around, because they're subsidized and there's a big wall of subsidy that surrounds them and nobody can really get in. And then there's lots of other informal things like the parliamentary press gallery, which only allows in certain publications. And there's also the fact that politicians, as we've experienced, just won't do interviews with anybody except the subsidized media. They just don't bother. In many cases, they don't even respond to emails and phone calls.
The sad part is that they do, like you said, they choke off the competition, which is what they do. They take away, they actually fund our competition and choke us off, choke off our ability to generate revenue. And it also makes our communities unsafe in times of crisis like wildfires because we can't get our information out to the people. So that continues. Let's move on to some...
It keeps the stagnant pool, the stagnant ecosystem of the Canadian media stagnant, which is precisely what they desire. They desire to be in a stagnant pool of water because they don't know how to exist in anything else.
Let's move on to some BC and some local news. And the MLA says marriage can weather Bill 15, but what of EB's relationship with First Nations? That's Grand Chief Stuart Phillip is among the fiercest critics of BC's government's planned legislation to fast-track infrastructure projects. But his wife, Joan Phillip, says she'll be voting on the bills on Wednesday as a member of EB's government. And she said she doesn't talk much shop with her husband. There you go. They've been married 40 years, going on 41. So there you go.
That's just weird, isn't it? How could you not have that conversation with your spouse?
Dissent in the family there. That is like EB's trying to fast track a couple of bills. And John Rustad said he's going to take every opportunity he can to provide a vote of no confidence and take down the government.
This is, I mean, we said it's almost a bit, it's boring, isn't it, how predictable it is? We said that this was going to happen, didn't we? That they can try all they want with these infrastructure projects, but there's so many obstacles in place. And it's just like clockwork. Quebec was first out. Now we've got the First Nations. Quebec, then BC. Then we got certain First Nations. I shouldn't say all of them, because some of them are very, very gung-ho about it and very keen. I mean, then the next thing is like urbanites that don't want to see a crane near their house or something like that. That's the next obstacle. And obviously, environmentalists, the glorious golden environmentalists who will try and prevent a pipeline because it might upset a frog or something.
And don't forget Stephen Guilbeault, who's come out time and time again saying there's no need for another pipeline. So there you go. BC's health minister says about 6,000 are on extended leave for mental health care. And they're on leave from involuntary mental health care in the province last week, pushing back against opposition claims that the patients aren't being tracked. The status is known as extended leave, in which a person receiving involuntary mental health treatment is allowed back in the community while remaining under care. And obviously this is
that
a big
sounds pretty smart, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, obviously this is a big story because of the 11 people that died when that SUV was driven at a high speed through a crowded street on festival goers on April 26th. Kelowna landlord ordered to pay former tenants, this is a big number, $27,000 for wrongful eviction. And then so the former tenants for wrongful eviction were given $27,000. And then, because there's only certain reasons you can evict somebody and you're supposed to move into the property. And Jane Lee evicted her tenants in June of 2023. The tenants, the McLeans, had been living there from August 2020 to 2023, and they were paying about $2,200 a month. She said she was going to move in, but then she actually didn't, kind of like partially moved in. The judge found that, she didn't meet the standard for that, and that her testimony was full of holes as well. So $27,000, though. There you go.
Not bad. That'll get you a few months of rent in Kelowna, at least.
Yeah. There you go.